Hey everybody, welcome to Patty G Show. I'm here for another great, exciting episode. We're going to have some business talk. We're going to have some health talk, routine talk, entrepreneur talk, cold plunge talk, fasting talk. We have such a wide array of topics to cover with our guest this week that I'm just not going to hesitate anymore to get within Dom of Marex Services.
Patty, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on, man. We made it happen. We're here. We're
Finally.
in the flesh.
That's right.
I'm excited.
A few cancellations, right?
Postponements, never a cancellation.
Fair.
Because you're here.
That's right. That's fair.
So for those listening at home, Dom, who are you and what the heck is it that you do?
Thanks. I'm father of 4 children, married to my beautiful wife, Ashley, of almost 20 years now. Born and raised in a little town called Eunice. And I guess I migrated here right after high school. Actually, I had a small stint at LSU Elementary, LSU-E in Eunice.
Okay.
And then ended up at LSU in Baton Rouge. And, really have been here, well, back and forth. But yeah, went to school here and just glad to be here. I founded a company called Marex Services in 2011. And, we are in the freight business, in the technology and freight business, and we do logistics. So it's a lot of fun.
So logistics sounds like a typical boring subject for most people when they think of logistics. It's like, oh, we're just shipping a box from A to B and that's it. But you have a whole history that led up to this business getting started back in 2011. So let's back up a little bit. How did you get to that point where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna start a logistics company?
Yeah, good question. So I guess it all began really at the Shaw Group in college. I started there at Shaw as an intern in the mailroom, and so I always like to say that my career in logistics began in the mailroom. And fun job. You had to pick. It was the Shaw Building on Essen Lane, 12 floors, and you got to pick sort of. For the mail route, push the cart around, you got to pick what floors do you want to go to, right? 1 to 6 or 6 to 12. And I was excited to get selected for 6 to 12 because that's where all the decision makers officed. And so got to meet, a lot of the guys we all know so well, and was really just happy to have the opportunity to be a part of such great energy in that company and what they were doing, and ultimately what I ended up doing for a while with them. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I was basically a runner, delivering mail, all time sensitive stuff. But a great gig during college, that's for sure.
So this started out as a college job. Like you're at LSU, you moved from the LSU Elementary to LSU BR.
That's right.
And you're like, I want to go and be at a career fair, in today's world of jobs and how they do career fairs, how do they sell a mail running job?
Great question.
To college students.
It actually, like most things, maybe at least in Louisiana, it started at a party, and a good friend of ours, a good friend of mine at the time, Ashley Watson, asked me if I had any interest in working at Shaw. And if I remember correctly, if I'm being honest, the question was, can you pass a drug test? And
That's a fair question.
My answer was yes. And so apparently there was a pretty limited pool, but so I applied.
Well, look, so my dad has a small business, and he's going through the hiring process, and he asked somebody that same question: can you pass a drug test? It's part of our standard practices here. We drug test every new hire, and the response that he got from this potential employee was, "How soon?"
Right. Honesty is.
It's a great character trait, but when youyou're hiring your future employer asks, "Can you pass?" and you ask, "How soon?"
Did he get the job?
No, he did not, because it was my dad was his response was, "Well, today, can you pass the drug test today?"
Right, fair.
He said, "Well, let me call you back
right.
in a month."
It started there, and coming from Eunice, kind of always felt I was an underdog, and Baton Rouge is a big place when you're from a small place like Eunice, and so the mailroom really, and Shaw in general. I mean, I owe so much to those guys, to all of the really the leadership team, and it taught me a lot about business and gave me access and allowed me to build these great relationships and people that I'm still close to this day, and just really, really cool, phase of life to do that. But that's really where I guess the logistics seed was planted. Obviously, I wasn't always doing logistics for Shaw. I was more doing business development, but I had an opportunity after getting to know a lot of the guys, Dan Shapiro, Tim Barfield, Bernhard. It was at the time when the Iraq War was about to kind of finish, and Reconstruction was becoming a pretty hot topic. And so when you watch Fox News and you see the shock and awe, it's not so exciting to think about it, but the reality was there was a lot of rebuilding that needed to happen, and Shaw needed a team forward deployed. And so I was lucky enough to be picked to go to Dubai, and in 2003 it was pretty fast. I mean, I had a car, and I was dating my wife now. I was dating Ashley, and it was a couple years, and so I sold the car, proposed to Ashley, and within about 30 days I was on a one-way flight to Dubai. So that was exciting.
Did she come with you?
And so after we got married, she did. We basically spent our engagement apart, and then she joined me in 2004.
Okay.
After we were married, and but it was a pretty wild, just kind of. I looked around the corporate office and thought, man, I'm going to be competing with a lot of talent here. I might as well, get out and go see if I can, earn some credit. So it was fun and did that, but that was kind of the beginning of the logistics bug, I guess.
So beginning of logistics bug in a mailroom, pushing the cart as you often see on movies, and you're just delivering these packages. In that moment, did you see it as just a mail delivery job, or were you so forward thinking of like, this is the first step and the 6 to 12 floors is where I need to be in order to get that advancement? Where was your mindset at that time?
I think initially my mindset was, I'll just do the job and do it well, and we'll see what happens. But at that time, I was kind of really indecisive about what I was going to do when I grew up, right? I was pre-law, and then I was business, and took the LSAT, and I realized that like business is where it's at. And so Shaw really kind of cemented my interest in business, and it gave me this global view that I didn't have before, coming from a little town in fill-in-the-blank Louisiana, right? And so, and then I realized pretty quickly, like, look, this is awesome. These folks are going somewhere. This is a great opportunity. And so I really just tried to network and get to know folks. And so I really saw it as maybe more than what it was. And I'll never forget kind of putting together the spreadsheet for Dan Shapiro. And I outlined how cheap I was and how easily I could move to a place like Dubai, and how much they needed somebody to sort of do all these tasks that no one wanted to do. It was basically the mailroom mentality, right? That underdog of like, if you give me the opportunity, I promise I won't let you down. And I ended up on the way to a board meeting with Dan Shapiro in North Carolina. And it was the Shaw board. It was Jim and the whole team at the time. And the presentation was Restore Iraq Oil. It was the big contract with the Corps of Engineers in Iraq. And I was there. I was the guy with the laptop opening it and holding the briefcase. And I felt so.
You were the clicker controller.
That's right. Yeah. And got to know those guys, and at dinner that night, got to know those guys, and I felt so fortunate and blessed to this day to be to have that opportunity, and it was that trip really that allowed me to sort of see the opportunity, put together the package request, and then I guess they needed someone to clean the dishes and carry the briefcases, so I was selected. And it was fun. We were a small team, about 6 guys, and we were in Dubai from really 2003 with Shaw until about 2007, when I left Shaw in 2007. But it was a lot of fun. It was in and out of places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Jordan, Pakistan, you name it, and pretty intense logistics there. And that was really what I think inspired me to kind of look at logistics as really a niche. And I thought, it's dynamic. There's problems to solve. It's exciting, and you can add value with a bit of perseverance and grit in that industry. And so if you work super hard and you deliver on your promises, then ultimately the freight gets moved, the project's on schedule, and everyone's happy. So that's really what inspired me, I guess, to pursue the career.
So you're going in this as a maybe mid-20s guy, freshly engaged. What was the initial, after the shock wore off, when you told your wife, hey, will you marry me? By the way, I'm moving to Dubai. What was her reaction?
Yeah, great question. I mean, she was super supportive and a huge fan of it. And I remember obviously it was a big ask. It's like, hey, you're the one, will you marry me? But by the way, I'm not going to be here for 9 months. So that was a tough one for her to, for me, it was all opportunity. And I think for her, it was more sacrifice. And, but the sell was, hey, and this is in October, I left in October, if you say yes, then we can meet in Paris for Christmas. And so for a girl from Monroe, living in Baton Rouge, the idea of meeting in Paris was super exciting. So I think that got her, I think that helped sort of warm her up to the whole idea. And then meeting her in Paris for Christmas happened, and that was amazing. And the next thing you know, we're walking down the aisle in July, and later, 6 months later, and then moving to Dubai after that. So it was, she's amazing. And was just completely supportive of the whole thing. I think she might be more adventurous than I am. She's
really,
yeah, she's got it. She's just got the spirit, and for her, it's all one big adventure, and it's a lot of fun being married to her. So,
welcome to the brand new Falaya mobile app. We took all the same tech that's helped hundreds of people sell their homes themselves and packed it into an easy-to-use app for your phone. When you download the Falaya mobile app on either the Apple or Android App Store, you'll immediately be able to see the power of this game-changing tool. From the seller's dashboard, you can navigate to all the information that you need. We intentionally separated everything into key groups, such as tasks to be completed, buyer leads for your listing, and contact information for everyone involved through closing. When you get an offer on your property, you can simply review and respond all within the app. No matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to monitor everything that's going on with your property from listed to sold. It's truly the power of Falaya in the palm of your hand. Download the app and see for yourself. Falaya, it's real estate reimagined.
So, living in Dubai as newlyweds, and you're the one with the job, I guess. What was that dynamic? She's in a foreign country. I'm just curious from how this household operation occurred, being in a foreign country with only work colleagues. What was that experience like in the early days of 9 months you being there, and then she joined you later? What did y'all do?
Yeah, so the work group, my colleagues and their spouses, we all really became family, and so it was this really close knit, awesome structure for this newlywed couple, right? No real perspective on how to do this newlywed thing. We're in this exciting new city, working really hard, but we're, definitely creating amazing memories with the work group and spending time with their families. And so we bonded. And so our work life became our family life. And it really was a unique experience looking back on that. And it gave Ashley and I a chance to really kind of set our tone for how we were going to be as a couple, and it helped stress test at an early stage as well, right? Some of the challenges that you experience as a married couple. So that was fun. It was super difficult for her, as kind of a stay-at-home mom without any kids at the time, and I'm off working. I think it was like 10 days upon our arrival that I left for Baghdad for a couple weeks or 10 days. I forget how long I was there at the time, but it's, hey, here's the apartment. this guy's here to drive you if you need it. You're not legal yet. You don't have a residence card, but that'll happen soon in 30 days or so. But I got to go.
Just camp out for 30 days in the apartment.
Luckily, my colleagues and their wives took her in and treated her like their own, and we were just so blessed to be brought in. And it's really set a lot of the tone for, we have a young team at our company today, and how we interact and view our team is really like family, and try to pay it forward with the same love and experience that I was given at that age. I try to pay forward to our group. So, but yeah, it was a total adventure. The Dubai days, amazing stories to say the least.
So, what are like top 2 stories from? We won't go down all of them, but what are some top 2 moments that you had in Dubai?
Oh, gosh, adventures in Iraq and adventures in Afghanistan. I would probably say the Afghanistan. There's a bunch of stories, but there was one in Afghanistan that was pretty unique. We just landed a contract with the Corps of Engineers, and for some reason, my responsibility was to pay the locals every week, and so we opened a bank account.
What do you mean pay the locals?
So we had cooks and security guards and guys that worked at our villa. So our villa, had like 10, 12 rooms, and we probably had 30 people there. And so my job was to pay these guys. And so we had to open a bank account to pay them cash, because obviously they don't have bank accounts. So I would go to the city, and this is in Kabul, Afghanistan. And so I would kind of commute from the residential neighborhood where we lived into the city to go to the bank to withdraw some cash to make payroll, right?
Right.
And make sure that the cooks kept cooking and the security guards kept us safe. And after a couple of trips to the bank to withdraw cash, I got a letter that there was a bit of a, let's say, a bounty on my head, because they knew I was getting cash. So they had watched my patterns, whoever these people were.
Right.
And, they had picked up on our pattern. And so it was an interesting...
So what was it in English? What did this letter arrive? And
like
you reading this, how do you respond? I
think it was an email from it was from the embassy or someone in the government saying, hey, just know that you guys you need to be smart, and we would get letters like declaring white city, which meant you can't go anywhere, you can't leave the villa. You're in lockdown. There's some stuff going on down the road, or, an IED just went off. And so you had, on any given day, your life was in danger, and any moment you could be told you're not leaving, or you could be on the way to a meeting with a client. And I could have my North Face backpack that used to have my finance books in it, would have PowerPoint presentations, and, you're like, all of a sudden you're in a protest, and you can't move, you can't progress in the vehicle because you're in a protest, and there's a bunch of angry Afghans. And that happened one day when the soldiers in Guantanamo had flushed the Quran down the toilet. That really sort of caused some problems in Kabul, and we felt them on the streets. I was on my way to a meeting when that happened, and so you just had all these. So the logistics of doing business and being safe and kind of growing things in a market like that, in an environment like that, became pretty dynamic, and either excited you or scared you. And it was pretty fun to think back on it. And 25 years old, it's, I don't know, what's the statistic? Like the male frontal lobe doesn't fully develop to 26 or something.
It's like so mid to late 20s.
I think that's fair.
I think I just got there.
Right.
or still happening.
2 kids. I think your frontal lobe's pretty mature nowadays. Hopefully, maybe not.
Who knows? So you're in this war-stricken kind of rebounding, but still having all this turmoil, like environment at all times. I mean, at what point do you just look around and say, like, this is too much?
Yeah.
Or did you ever have that moment?
Sure. No, and I think the usual sort of duration for, an American or a Western expat who sort of finds himself in this, intense disaster environment, whether it's post-conflict or during civil unrest or whatever it may be. It's usually 2 to 4 weeks. Like 30 days was always kind of the limit. And I think the lining of my stomach was I was a little weaker than some. Some could come in and like be there for 60 days and not blink an eye. But I was pretty sensitive to it all, and it really kind of it exhausts you. It just takes your energy because you're always on high alert. Like your adrenaline and your cortisol's way up, and then you get back to Dubai and it's like, holy cow! Like we got to blow off some steam. So you hit the bars, or you take Ashley. I took Ashley on dinner dates and stuff, and just try to decompress from it all. But it was it's interesting to think back on it, and as exhilarating, as fun as it was also pretty exhausting.
I imagine so. I mean, always living with this sort of, I have to look over my shoulder every given moment, and I have to turn down a street, but always be cognizant of, did a car behind me also turn down the street? Like, you just are 360 100% of the time. That is very exhausting and mentally, physically draining, I'm sure. This episode is proudly presented by Gage. Gage is a local company here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. For over 40 years, Gage has provided businesses with the very best telecommunications, IT, and standby power services available. Gage has a variety of services, including Gage Cloud Voice. It is the last phone system your business will ever need. You need to give your business the ability to be accessible anytime, anywhere, and with Gage's cloud-based phone system, you'll be able to accomplish just that. Not only do they have Gage Cloud Voice, they have fully managed IT services that are proactive network monitoring, 24/7, 365, help desk, business continuity. They are there for you. What you're also going to need is some cybersecurity. Gage is there to safeguard your business from potential cyber threats, even when you aren't aware they exist. Gage also is power and leaders in standby generators. They are the #1 Cummins dealer on the Gulf Coast and provide generators to homes and businesses of any size so you can keep life going. Gage, better connected, a proud sponsor of the Patty G Show. I mean, we're there. So your security detail, I imagine, was just all local people. It was not any actual U.S. security.
We had a good mix. Shaw was really smart about how we operated from a security standpoint. There were companies that would hire these, big sort of security contractors who were, let's say, a little louder than others. Shaw's approach was really on just low profile, the used Jeep Grand Cherokee that doesn't look like it's, carrying Westerners or any sort of high profile anything, and with some aftermarket armor was just good enough for us. There were no expeditions jacked up in the Blackwater sort of mentality, and that model worked really well and kept us safe. And honestly, I owe it all to Shaw and the team, because there were times where you're like, what's going to happen here? And our guys were smart. They were all mostly ex-military, a lot of American ex-Marines and Army and SEALs, and a lot of local Iraqi detail and Afghan detail as well, that was really kind of managed by the Americans. So that was a super cool experience, and humbling to see those guys in action. I'll never forget, I was in it was my first day in Baghdad, and I was going to get my badge made. You have to get a DOD badge, and so you go and you take the picture, and you have to wait a couple hours. So we went and had lunch in the dining facility, and after lunch, walking back to the truck, and I'll never forget, I put my hand on the handle to open the door, and I felt this massive explosion, and I hit the deck, and I thought I was gone, and I'm covered in limestone chalk, and I'm the only guy that hit the deck, and I'm shaking the chalk off, dusting the chalk off, and I look around, and I'm like, what just happened? And one of the, I guess troops or contractors, I forget who, but everybody's laughing at me, and this guy looks at me and says, "Hey man, truck backfire, you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine," And I look, and it was a KBR truck that had backfired right by me. He was backing up. I'm getting in the car, and it's this huge explosion. I'm on the ground for whatever, an hour and a half, and I'm already laying in the chalk, just shaking. And
you're like, this is it, man.
This is it.
I'm done.
This is it.
They're gonna send my body back to Ashley in a bag.
Yeah, that's right. Show up to get my DOD badge with chalk all over my Shaw polo and my khakis. Zach Morris hits the dust or something. I mean, but so it was moments like that are kind of hilarious. And I'll never forget what kind of gave me perspective on a lot of things was we were having a meeting, and the CPA, the Coalition Provisional Authority, and we were meeting in Saddam's palace, and our military had taken over the palace. And so I'm in the bathroom stall, and I look on the stall, and it's got graffiti everywhere, go Bulldogs, go Tigers, whatever it may be. And I look, and it says, "Embrace the suck." And that really hit home. Here I am, 24-year-old in Iraq, and I'm so far from home. I have no training for this. It's all on a whim. And it says, "Embrace the suck." And that resonates today. It's like, when it sucks, and it will, just embrace it and go with it,
Yeah. And then you're just like, so long as I don't have another backfire incident,
that's right.
It'll be a good day.
Yeah. Embrace the suck and look for vehicles backing up. Right?
So at some point while you were there, was the job over, or were you enough? Like, what brought you back to the States?
Yeah. I mean, our business development efforts kind of softened up a bit. We had secured plenty of work, and Shaw had secured plenty of work in the region, and so really kind of shifted, and they wanted me back home at corporate, and so I came back really in 2005, and then found myself going back and forth to the region from here, and then at some point I just kind of, the whole engineering, construction, business development world just kind of got monotonous for me, and I was kind of ready for a change, and maybe it was the ignorance is bliss sort of 27-year-old mentality. So in 2007, I tendered my resignation at Shaw and left, and ended up, I was recruited by a friend I had met in Dubai named Steve English, and Steve was doing mergers and acquisitions for this kind of the startup maritime yacht marina lifestyle company called Island Global Yachting. And Island Global Yachting was backed by this private equity fund out of New York. And so Steve calls me up. I was like, I got a job for you on my team. I need a BD guy to go and sort of help grow the marina management and marina development business back in the Middle East and in Europe as well. Are you interested? And I did some research on the company and saw kind of the opportunity and thought, man, this is really a chance to learn finance and also kind of get into more real estate and maritime, which was at that time was of interest to me. And looking back on it, it was really a lot more just logistics. But so I took that gig and did that for a few years. And then really in 2010 is when we found ourselves, Ashley and I found ourselves in Dubai. We were pregnant for our first child, Landry. And she looked at me and she was like, this is crazy. Like, we're about to have our baby here. We need to kind of think about coming back home. And so we actually moved back here, or we flew back here to have Landry, and then went back to Dubai for about 9 months. So she was born here at Women's Hospital. We were going to have her at the American Hospital in Dubai, and we got cold feet at the end, and flew back to a Women's Hospital on Airline Highway and kept it real, just decided to do that. And then we all, the three of us, moved back to, Ashley brought Landry to Dubai, and we were there 9 months, and she looked at me, she was like, this is enough. Like, we're having kids, I have no help, you're always traveling. Like, we've done this for your career for a while, let's move back. So
right.
We did. So we started to kind of put the plan in place to get back here, and in 2010 we moved back to Baton Rouge, and kind of have been here since, and just, it's been, it's flown by. It's flown by.
And now it's back to Baton Rouge in 2010. And what are what's your next move at that point? What are your
So my
you can't travel as much. You're done mostly in Dubai.
That's right.
So how do you transition from all this travel to I got to stay home and do the family thing?
Yeah, so the agreement was that she would allow me to travel and continue to sort of chase the dream, knowing that that's kind of how at that time it's how I ticked, and that's all I knew was get on a plane, go meet potential clients and put deals together, and so that's what we did, and so in 2010 I partnered up with 3 local entrepreneurs, Chad Brose, Donnie Jaro, and Ralph Dyer, and we started to do some kind of, let's call it, government contracting stuff. The BP oil spill hit, and started basically doing logistics of like oil and gas vessels and brokerage of boats and charters of boats. And that's really what kind of solidified my interest in logistics. And really we had no strategy. We just said, let's go see what's going to happen here, and did pretty well at the beginning of the BP oil spill. So that was what kind of gave me, I guess, the confidence and the desire to kind of go out on my own. And so in 2011, I we were pregnant with our second child, Caswell, who's 12 years old now. So in 2011, I decided, all right, I'm gonna start a logistics company. I'm gonna call it Marex, short for the Maritime Exchange. Which the idea was that we would build a system, an exchange that would have all the assets, the boats, the barges, and folks, charterers, and interested shippers could come to that platform and really sort of match the asset with the need, with the cargo, and asked me if that worked out. But
did it work out?
Not necessarily as intended. Surprise, right?
Imagine taxiing on a plane looking toward the end of the runway. It seems so far away, it's even hard to see it. And that's what the concept of retirement probably felt like when you were in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, way far in the distance, not visible or even a concern. But as you turn 50, something happens. Retirement suddenly seems like something real, something not too far away. In your 50s, you are rolling down the runway. Retirement is getting closer and closer, faster and faster, weeks and months zipping by. But are you even ready for a successful takeoff to retirement? Fear not, there's still runway left, but the time is now. Time to make progress, and time to get a plan. The Runway Decade will help you get organized, get energized, and give you the direction you need to take off to your desired retirement. The Runway Decade, building a pre-retirement flight plan in your 50s.
But yeah, and I went to my uncle, who had been in oil and gas and who I respected, and wanted to see if he was interested in maybe being a business partner. And he kind of laughed when I offered him equity in my startup, and instead said, "How about I give you a loan?" And so we did a loan, and that got me started. So I armed with my startup loan and a interesting concept. Kind of hit the pavement, and that's when Marex was born, really. Yeah.
So it was born as this maritime exchange platform. At what point did you realize, it sounds like you had to do a pivot somewhere along the way?
A few pivots along the way, right? And exactly. I mean, initially the first few years were, basically matching supply boats and barges with the need, shippers needing to get freight in response to BP or, construction projects within the Gulf of Mexico or the inland waterways. At one point, we purchased some vessels, and we were doing like some stuff out back and forth out of Mississippi into to Cat and Horn Islands for BP as well. These were small boats, 40-foot boats with really utilitarian boats, twin engines, and put a captain and a deckhand, and you go out with ATVs and clean the islands and stuff like that. And so, but that was kind of the focus, was this like local, regional kind of logistics firm that could kind of be a Swiss Army knife to respond to the demand in the market. and really didn't have at that time any aspirations or, I guess forethought to say, okay, let's create a door-to-door logistics company. Let's build a global forwarding company. It didn't, at the time, I was just kind of looking at that market. But really it was when the opportunity came around to help move some frac sand from China into the Bakken oil fields of North Dakota. And that was really where I knew, okay, there's a lot to logistics, right? It starts in China where the product is made, and it ends up down a hole in North Dakota. And if you think about all the steps in between, right, you've got the first mile between the factory and the port in China. You've got the port operations. You've got the shipping, the ocean freight. You've got the port operations in the States, the rail operations, all the way to some sort of a terminal. And then you got trucking. And so really the group that I met in Houston, this company they were kind of receiving this product by rail, and were kind of managing the transloading of the product, the storage of it, and then the delivery to the well site. And my question was, well, what about the first part of this? What about the ocean freight? What about the port? How's that being done? Well, it's being done by somebody else, and this is how they do it. And that was really the opportunity that someone else was kind of doing it one way, which was in containers, and they were putting these big bags of product. It's like it was sand, basically. It was man-made sand. They were putting it in containers, and the thought that I had, and it's kind of a long story, but I worked with. I put a note out to some friends from LSU and said, "Hey, who knows anyone in blue water shipping? I need a contact." And so the name came up. Ben Blanchard was the name that was referred to me, and Ben's from Houma, the Houma area, or actually Covington area. Spent a lot of time in down the bayou fishing, but he was one of the few LSU grads that had like shipping experience. And so I met Ben in New Orleans over oysters and a beer, and got to know him, and he was working for this Dutch-owned shipping company, and it was that Dutch-owned shipping company. There was an ops guy behind the curtain, so to speak, named Paul Esser, who was really kind of designing this whole how we're going to ship it. And so I partnered with Paul and Ben and the team to really get the product in. And so that was kind of that was how I did it, right? Was finding the experts in that business. And then I flew to the West Coast and really just kind of traveled the ports and met with the different ports and said, like, how do we do this better? How do we do it more efficiently? And realized that we could, load 20 sacks at a time instead of containers, and that was a cheaper, more efficient way of doing it. And so that was really kind of got my eyes open around, all right, this global supply chain stuff is interesting. It's dynamic. It requires, contacts across the world, and obviously there's a lot of little niches within it. And so started with kind of the ocean freight piece, got involved with the port. So we managed, basically my scope of work, Marex's scope of work was from the factory in China to North Dakota to the terminal. So it was kind of trucking, port, ocean, port, rail. And then this partner of mine handled it from North Dakota to the wellhead. We ultimately partnered up and formed a company called Philamar Energy Services, which we started in 2013. And that was really an oil and gas logistics company. And so it was, it was a fun ride. We focused really on the transportation of frac sand. And so it was that business really that opened my eyes to kind of this whole end-to-end logistics thing. So Marex was kind of put on hold a bit so that I could go focus on frac sand logistics, which we did really from 2013 until 2019. I exited the company. And during that time as well, there were opportunities to really to sort of see all the industry was antiquated. There were a lot of inefficiencies with respect to how this product was moved, how it was planned, how it was dispatched. And so we saw an opportunity to build a software, and we did that during that time as well. Really from like 15 to 19 was the kind of the frac sand logistics software days, and it was really a last mile visibility platform that we built for ourselves, for our own operations, to kind of automate the final mile. Because the trucking, if you think about it, you're trucking in frac logistics, you're moving about 300 truckloads in a 24-hour period on a given well site. So you think about, and it could be 20 below North Dakota, or you could be in the middle of nowhere on this ranch in Texas, and you've got to organize, you've got to plan, you've got to sort of push all that product to the well when the well needs it to keep the frac going. And any downtime is super it's costly. So, if you think about all that goes into really kind of orchestrating and planning and scheduling the delivery of that material, it's pretty complicated, and it can get pretty intense. So we built a system that really gave visibility to all the parties. So our client could now order the loads through a mobile phone app, and then the dispatcher could assign it either through the mobile app or through a web app. Accounting wise, it automated how people were paid, and it did the reconciliation of the loads. So it was, reducing and eliminating a lot of the back office. So it automated that piece. And, we built it ourselves first with contact from the Dubai days, with a small team in India, and realized we'd built it as a single tenant system, which is not going to do much for anyone other than our own use. Right. And then one day, I was leasing some office space with Randall Nachman, and I was telling him about the problems and stuff, and he's like, "Man, you kind of built it wrong. I think we can help you." And I was like, "Man, we're friends. Should we really do this?" And he was like, "I don't know. If you want to, I mean, we can really help though." And sure enough, after talking with Randall and his partner Zishan, I realized, man, these guys, they know what they're doing. They've been in the mortgage business and automating that, and that's obviously a lot of moving pieces as well. So we basically rebuilt the software from the ground up, redesigned it, re-engineered it, rebuilt it, and ultimately it became this market leader, and we were the only ones, and we had market share, and everyone wanted it, and so we started licensing it, and it was really a lot of fun, and we grew that into. It still today is kind of, I guess, one of the primary systems being used in that market for its niche, for last mile automation. So that's kind of where the tech-enabled thing comes in, is our roots in building software to kind of help automate. So
which was risen out of a need from your internal system of how do you improve that. So it sounds like your whole kind of career is figuring out the most efficient way to get something done, and from that, businesses and products have spawned off ultimately become successful.
Yeah, I mean that's a great word. I think we've had some success, and we're enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. It's a total adventure. But yeah, I guess the constant pursuit to provide a really good service quality, and B, automate and bring efficiency to something that could be done either kind of faster, better, smarter, or more efficiently. And I think some of that comes from this third world experience, back to the Shaw days of like, should it be this difficult? Like, we can do it better. Like, we can do it faster. And so I think it's with that, with that mindset that we approach a lot of the work we do today.
Thank you so very much to Currency Bank, a proud sponsor of the Patty G Show. If you are looking for a business bank that fosters on 3 core values, relationships, service, and technology, Currency Bank is the place for you. They pride themselves on convenient, accessible, and secure online banking resources where you can manage your account balances, initiate transfers, enroll with e-statements, and more via their online portal. Between the relationships, the service, and the technology, they are going to be that partner with your business every step of the way, regardless of what you need. Currency Bank is the bank for business owners.
So what businesses are you still actively involved in?
Yeah, so Marex really is my primary business, and Marex has been around 13 years. There's been some evolutions, but today we're really a technology-enabled logistics company, and we help clients both locally, regionally, and internationally who have really a vested interest in moving freight or moving things to the door, to the destination, whether it's project cargo, whether it's rental equipment or industrial valves, or we've got a client that does window tint all over the world, and we help them move that. But we find businesses who are really good at renting equipment or building valves, or and we help automate their supply chain. And so we find savings in how things are moved for them, and how the logistics is really planned and executed. And we do that really with technology, our assets. And we, at one point in the oil and gas logistics company, we owned lots of trucks and trailers. I think our trailer fleet was 300 or so trailers and a couple dozen trucks. But I've realized over the years that our assets really are our people and our technology. And so we're non-asset based. And that really allows us to be not, just to kind of approach clients with no bias, So it's not necessarily about moving it on this truck or that one or this vessel or that barge. It's more about, hey, we're non-biased here. The asset is, is less important. It's more about how we do it, how we plan it and study it and effectively move it. So Marex is really, and in Marex we have different divisions, but we're primarily in the industrial space, in the manufacturing and distribution space. We focus in project cargoes, so we're a lot of fabrication. So we'll do modules and pipe and, help automate. You think about what's going on in the LNG space. We're involved in some projects here locally where there's massive supply chain or trucking challenges where they've got all these modules coming out, 300 modules that have to get here in a certain order at a certain budget, and they have to get back there, and then they got to go to project site, and all that's got to get sort of planned out and executed. So those are the things we do, and we do it primarily through a small team. We've got a small team here in Baton Rouge. We're downtown, and we have this kind of a control tower setup where we use technologies and team members to really sort of study, plan, and execute the delivery of this freight for different clients. So that's really our core business. I'm also recently getting involved with Randall and Zishan again on the Noveda side, their company and what they've done since we sold the software in 2019. They've kind of stayed in the logistics tech space. And so there's a real opportunity to help scale that. And so I'm a part of that now, and I'm really trying to help that because it really just feeds what we're doing in Marex. And, feel like technology, it's innovate or die in our industry. It's,
right.
Like any industry, but we've got to automate. We've got to bring, good platforms that make our customers and our vendors just makes their life easier. And, and our whole thing with technology is to try to do it, keep it simple, make it intuitive, make it easy to use. And we've been told 1,000 times, that's not going to work with trucking. They're not going to use that mobile app, or, and we've learned over the years that if you make it simple, if you keep it basic, and if it's intuitive enough, then they'll use it. And if they use it, then you get adoption, and adoption, is what you have to have. So that's been fun, and we're still learning there, but it's been fun.
Yeah, it sounds like you've kind of been gradually moving through this technology space, and now you're exploring how that translates in everything else that you do. So I'm curious, from a multiple business involvement standpoint as an entrepreneur, what does that routine look like for you from a management standpoint on your own? How do you think about things when you wake up? What's that daily routine look like, and how do you organize your day over the course of all these different businesses you're involved with?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, from a tech standpoint, we're pretty more and more. I mean, in 2023, we've become heavily reliant upon the tech systems that we have, whether they're built in house or licensed. There's a mixed bag of them, but so nowadays, I mean, we're looking at profitability by the load, by the day. We're looking at efficiency on how quick did a truck turn. We're looking at on our team, how efficient are they at dispatching, how many loads do they do. So it's all really in the system. And so we're pretty reliant. I'm very reliant on tech. But it's really the team plus the technology that's required. Marex is what I do pretty much daily, and so yeah, I mean, my morning routine and kind of how I plan the day is, I've realized as I get a little older that, I'm best in the mornings. I think you're a morning person, right?
Yeah, I knew when I texted you this morning, like 4:45. I was like, I need to text Dom to like make sure we're still on for today, just with everything. And I was like, thinking back, I said, no, he's gonna respond. And sure enough, in like 5 minutes,
I think
you pinged me back. I was like, I knew he was awake.
You were the first text this morning. It's pretty impressive when I saw that. And I have to admit, I was still in bed.
Still in bed.
I was still in bed. For some reason I couldn't sleep well last night. But anyway, yeah, it's I've realized that mornings are sacred, and so I try to the extent possible, right? Try to move most meetings to late morning or afternoon. So wake up and do the hard things in the morning. But yeah, I mean, morning routine's kind of another conversation. But from a business standpoint, the last few years, really since COVID, I try to use the mornings to truly think and to process what's going on and set intentions. And that really ties into gratitude and prayer and the morning routine around, if your mental well-being is sort of, I've found like the more I focus on the mental side and the physical, the spiritual side, I find the professional side just kind of follows suit. And that those kind of are more important than, the first 20 years of business, which was like, literally number one priority was work. And I think as I've gotten a little older, I've realized that, yeah, it's really not. I mean, it's super important, and yes, it's necessary, but, set your intentions, do your prayers, take your time, right? And then everything else will kind of follow suit. So.
Yeah, you got to have yourself centered and grounded in a sense that you can make decisions, whether it be quickly or effectively or efficiently. You have to know that you're grounded first and foremost to make the best version of yourself in the business world play out how it's supposed to.
That's right.
Whether it's doing something that you and Randall are crazy for doing in my eyes, with the 72-hour water fast. Like, that's just blows me away that y'all are doing something like that. And I'm curious, when going through those stages, do you find yourself sharper, more aware? I mean, I know you hear pine cones and cats walk. So how is that translated into your thought process through business with that extra layer of clarity?
Yeah, good question. I think that, the fasting is interesting. We were talking a little bit before the show about it. And, who would have known that fasting was good for you? But I think there's just so much, there's so much out there now about the benefits of fasting related to longevity. And, there were a couple of thought leaders and series that I've watched that kind of inspired me to test the fasting thing out. And honestly, I did it out of weakness because I feel I'm super weak when it comes to sugar and food, and I want it all the time. And, more is more. And so the fasting, and I did my first real 24-hour fast in like November of last year recently, and then December I did a 72-hour fast, and now I'm doing regular, I think it's 18-6, just intermittent, but that certainly has helped, I think, creates more just awareness, more in tune with what's going on, more gratitude for, when you do eat. And frankly, there's enough out there, right? Between water and coffee, or pick your beverage of choice, sparkling water. I mean, you can kind of get through it. I thought about it today. I'm like, what's worse? 2 hours of sleep or no sleep, or no food for 48 hours. And I think no sleep's harder. I mean, I think the fasting part is easier.
Thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Lake Men's Health Center with Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group. Guys, I know it's tough to get out and go to the doctor. I know it's challenging to find time in our busy days, but I promise you, signing up to be a part of this group with Dr. Curtis Chastain and Dr. Tyler Boudreau. You won't regret it for several reasons, but most of those being the fact of the time it saves, where you're able to get in on the same day, get that appointment done, and spend that time you need to talk with them about what your health goals and concerns are, as well as ensuring that the financial investments you have, you will be able to live out and see those come to fruition. So if you're an investing guy, you know all about and planning for the future and investing in the future. There's no other more important thing to invest in than your health. Make sure you go check them out. Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group Men's Health Center, and tell them Patty G sent you.
But yeah, I think all of the wellness, what I've kind of gotten into really since COVID was kind of the turning point for me. With like the transition between, for me, I looked at it as kind of like the halfway point. 20 years of business, COVID happens, and now hopefully I have a good 20 years ahead. And so I kind of viewed it as halftime. My wife and I had twins during COVID, and they turned 4 yesterday. And so it was kind of a reset for me to say, where am I headed? What am I doing? COVID really put our business in a chokehold because we couldn't travel anymore. We couldn't cut deals. We couldn't build relationships. We couldn't grow. Ports were shut down. Things stopped. And contrary to popular opinion, like supply chain logistics got really difficult during COVID. So, we were a little bit on the struggle bus during that time, and had a decent sized team that we kept on board. And so it was a big eye opener. And I saw a kind of fork in the road. Like, what do I do to kind of head of the bar and, enjoy the ride and just say, let's see what happens? Or do I kind of use it as an opportunity to tighten things up? And so that was when really the wellness, I guess, bug happened. And that's been fun. That's been super cool to push myself a little bit. And honestly, those around me, I'm surrounded by this amazing group of friends and even business partners and others that support that and kind of are all like-minded. Our team at the office is like that. Everyone's, trying to do things that hopefully reverse aging, and it's been fun. So,
well, yeah, and then you're taking on different challenges throughout your life and expanding on that. I mean, you're doing the cold plunges and all the crazy things that you're not taking it just like baby steps. Like you're going all in, which is what I love. It sounds like you do that in life and in your business.
I think that's
you just
fair.
go all in, and you're like, we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, there's probably a level of intensity that's annoying, and yeah, I'm trying to tame that spirit a little bit. But yes, I mean, and frankly, just being honest, right? So I decided about a year and a half ago it's probably time to hang up the jersey on drinking. And so for me, it was like, okay, if I'm not going to drink anymore, then what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to survive? Like
as
I'm not
a
gonna,
South Louisiana resident, like what do I do?
My jokes aren't funny. Like, none of it's, I have no more, I can't command the room anymore, whatever. And you just have these doubts. And so I started to research. I got into like flow state training, and flow state there's a guy named Stephen Kotler who writes a couple of really cool books on it. The Art of the Impossible is a book that he wrote. And then Nor Country, which is like no land for old men or something. But Stephen Kotler had a pretty bad disease and realized he went to surf one day and realized that even with this disease, he could harness the state of pure awareness and presence and just being, alert and in the moment. And I didn't know what flow state was, but athletes talk about it being in the zone. And so I signed up for this course, education course, and we had this small group. And in that group, I learned that like there were 12 of us. There were only 2 of us I could tell that were kind of drinking on the weekends. The rest were like, one's writing a book. I mean, these are people from all over the world. Harvard professor was our group leader, and I realized like I'm in the minority. Like a lot of folks who are doing cool things maybe aren't drinking, and so I was already on the fence with it, and it inspired me to kind of put it down for a while. And that really opened my eyes to the search for, drinking and all that. It's really about dopamine. It's about feeling good, the feel-good chemical. And I learned that you can really kind of, there's constructive and destructive ways to get the feel-good chemical, right? I mean, I've always enjoyed a glass of wine or 10. And, that's fun. That's where the feel-good chemical comes in. But you can also get that from an ice bath or from a marathon, or you can get it from, meditating or breath work, or you can get it from fasting, and that feel-good chemical can really happen from sitting down with a loved one or going on a nature walk. And so I realized like there's two sides to the equation, and realized that like, all right, let me try that stuff. So that was kind of why that explains kind of the intensity around the wellness stuff. And I feel as though, that the happiness, the just the enjoyment of doing business has really been sort of a byproduct of those little things, those habits, the cold plunge in the morning, or the breath work, or the yoga, or the running, or whatever it may be, has really kind of helped me to find happiness and not really even think about, the other stuff. So.
Yeah, you're changing the way you think, the way you operate, to focus more on the positive, uplifting
That's
dopamine than going what's the easier route. Like
Yeah.
you're taking the harder route
That's
to
right.
achieve the dopamine, but it's like in that process, it's almost more rewarding in a sense.
That's right.
And so it kind of gets your days aligned, gets you ready to go, and better tackle whatever business challenges you have.
That's exactly right. Yep. And it's like anything, right? I mean, there's days where you crush it, and there's days where you just fail. But that's life. And but no, it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, I would honestly prefer to go drinking. But it's really
It's much more relaxing than a cold plunge.
You're right, exactly. Yeah. But I'll take the alternative,
Yeah, it's, again, you're still getting that same rush in a sense, but it's like you got to work a little bit harder.
That's right.
Which kind of builds that, that adventurous side of you. So, I mean, man, you've kind of been all over the map and everything. I'm curious, over the course of your career, what are like 3 lessons you kind of learned along the way?
Oh, wow. Good question. So I think the first one is really, as an early entrepreneur, I was, it was a lot about I and what I need to do and what I can or can't do. And I realized recently, really in the last, really since my business partner, Paul, and I kind of partnered up in Marex, that it's really about the team, the power of a team. And what's the old saying, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go with others. And so I think one big takeaway for me, one thing that I've learned is that don't underestimate the power of a team who's aligned and like-minded and kind of rowing together. So that's been a big one. That really has kind of clicked for me recently. What's another one? Passion. So I think leading with passion and really finding something that, because when I interview people, or when we look at who's a fit or who's not a fit for anything that we do, we don't really look at the resume. And I mean, we look at the person and talk to them about what their interests are and see how they carry themselves, and we try to fit the person to the role. And the point of that is, finding the passion in and harnessing that and using that as the lead. Because to me, if you're passionate about what you're doing, like I'm passionate about logistics, I'm passionate about wellness and travel, I'm passionate about the things I love, and that creates the grit, and the grit is what keeps us there, right? It's
Right.
The grit skill. People talk about grit, but I mean, if you're gritty and you persevere for a year or two, but you don't have a passion around what you're you're ultimately going to give up. And so I guess passion equals grit, and grit equals stick-to-itiveness or longevity, and it's going to suck at some point, and so the grit gets us through the suck. And so I think passion's a big one. Gosh, what's the third one? I think the third one for me would be that sense of urgency. I think everything and I know that's a little counter to the first one, which is, more people to go further. But in the groups that I'm fortunate enough to be a part of, we all have a sense of urgency. And that's a cultural thing. And in logistics, you need it, right? You can't, if it's Friday or Saturday morning or whatever, you can't, there's no wait. It's now. And I love the saying, and I don't know who said it. It's definitely not me, but the saying of, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. And so our whole thing is really around, let's move quick. Let's be fast. Let's eat the slow.
Well, and what allows you to keep going further quicker is that team.
That's right.
If you have a team of people that understand a sense of urgency, then they can all move farther together, but as quickly as possible.
That's exactly
So
right.
I love that.
Yep.
So what is something you did as a kid you wish you could still do today? I know we discussed a little bit beforehand about you going to Nepal and doing this crazy hike.
Yep.
And how you were feeling it with 20-year-olds. So what is something as a kid you did you wish you could still do today?
Yeah. I think it would be kind of remain disconnected from a device and from a, like, we're so connected nowadays, right? And if you think back on your childhood, you weren't really connected. You were connected to your family and your close friends, but there were no devices, and so it's funny that part of that flow state course that I took was really about being disconnected and like literally minimizing all the alerts and alarms and things that get our attention from a social media standpoint and from a device standpoint. So I miss just the beauty of the stillness around, going with a group of friends, being in nature or doing whatever, and not having all the, the connectivity. And, and I mean, today it's, there was a recent article, I don't remember the publication, but it was on how as humans, we're really not made to be this connected. I mean, it's really affecting our happiness. And so I find that, we see ourselves taking these breaks, these sabbaticals from, the happiest we've been is when we, give up our phone for a weekend or whatever, or in a place where we have no cell service or no connection. So I think that's what I miss the most. And the fact that our kids really won't know that unless they, have the discipline to kind of put the device away and go. But yeah.
I think when you talk about the kid side of things, you can see it in their eyes, in their interaction, when there is a device in hand, they're all connected in that. But when there's no device in hand, they're all connected into what they're doing. So somehow they're able to plug into whatever it's doing, device-driven or non-device driven, and be all in. They've got that just flow state, like just seeing my kid pick up rocks and put it in his pocket, like it's something so simple, but he's just like so into whatever he's doing and like watching each rock fall out of his hand. I'm like, how can you be just so wrapped up in that exact thing? That flow state, as you described,
that's awesome.
Is incredible to see. It's like we as adults get so far removed from that over time, whether it be intentional or unintentional. And it's like when we go back to that, we find that happiness inside of us.
That's exactly right. No doubt. Yeah, I mean, we part of what we like to do for fun is go on these adventures where there really isn't connection and being off grid and just enjoying that time to really disconnect and think, and you kind of reconnect in it. You reconnect when you disconnect. So that's been nice, and it's a challenge. And technology is such a gift, but it's how we use it. Right. And setting those healthy boundaries that we're all so bad at. I'm so bad at it. I mean, it's crazy. It's like, why didn't you post for the twins' birthday yesterday? Well, I mean, I was busy. I mean, I didn't. Like,
just it the rest of the day got away from
yeah.
you.
And it's and it's almost like, but if you're 25 or younger, you probably posted. But if you're my wife and I's age, I mean, you may not have posted. But anyhow, it's interesting.
So what is something you love about Baton Rouge, being that you spent a whole lot of time not in Baton Rouge?
Yeah. I mean, Baton Rouge has always been where our heart is and where our community is. And I think one of the things we love the most about it is the community. And the fact that, there are other cities around us, there are other places where there's more opportunity and, things might be a little bit better. But here, it's almost like priorities are more aligned here. The people you meet, like yourself, I mean, you interact with people that care about their children, they care about being present, they care about, the quality of what their family's getting, as opposed to maybe the quantity and so for me, it's community. We're members at St. Aloysius. That community has become a family to us. But really, like, there's so many communities within this community that I find is really unique. Like, it's hard to replicate that. You don't find it in many places. And that for me is something that I just absolutely love about it. It's what's kept us here primarily. I always joked, I mean, there's more opportunity for us logistically to be in a place like Houston or another city, but we're here. We're going to stay here, and we're going to try to bloom where we're planted, so to speak, because it's the right stuff. I think at the end of the day, we look back on it and say that was the right move, as opposed to the shiny object. No offense to the other places, but. So I think it's that sense of community, and the fact that Baton Rouge is it's a big little town, and that's great,
Yeah, everybody's connected in some sense, and I find it's often 3, if not 2 connections I can get in touch with somebody I need to get in touch with.
Absolutely.
Whereas in a Houston, you've got to search.
That's right.
A long time to get in touch with somebody that's in no way, shape, or form connected to your network. Whereas here, I talk to one person, they go, oh, wait, hang on. I got their cell phone here.
Yep.
It's like that big little town that you're able to just connect so easily with people. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
So for the final question, Dom, is what can I do to help you?
Wow. Honestly, man, you've been doing this, 5 years now?
Starting our 5th year.
Starting your 5th year. I mean,
6th season, yeah.
Just keep going. This is, you're endorsing the entrepreneurial spirit of this community, which really gives back in so many ways, and just keep doing it. And we're grateful for you for doing that. And man, it's just keep doing it. Keep endorsing, promoting, and supporting, those of us with dreams and yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't plan on slowing down.
Good.
So it's if you have anybody you want to hear from or have them on the show, let's make that happen and keep this train rolling.
Well, you've had some amazing guests, and it's impressive. It's inspiring. It's impressive and inspiring to see all the creative, entrepreneurial people in this town, and it's the heartbeat of this place. And just humbled to be on with you and to talk a little bit about my story. And yeah, appreciate you.
It's a fascinating story, man. So thank you for coming on and sharing what you've shared.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, and thank you everybody else for tuning in, whether you're listening or watching. I appreciate it, and the guests do as well. So this has been a fun one, and yeah, we'll catch you here same time next week. See y'all.